It is a charming fiction, solicitously nourished by those who know nothing about it, that the man in the pulpit has it made, because before him sits a ready-made captive audience. Granted, they are there, but realism has to take its scalpel and cut a sharp distinction. So here is the distinction. If by captive one means that there are a certain number of bodies out there ranged in long rows who will probably never jump up crying, objection, or never walk out in protest, I concede. But if anyone thinks that these same people have flung out a red carpet so that you can comfortably and gracefully walk into their minds, I deny. No Babylonian captivity here. The congregation is not there, shoulders tilted forward expectantly, as if you were a teacher confiding the topics about which you are going to question them in an upcoming exam. They are not listening for the number that wins the state lottery. They are just there. They are not probably thinking about anything religious at all. Their thoughts, if you could pull them, range over 1,000 other things, from just what causes the rattle they noticed that morning in the car, to wondering how long it will take to get an appointment with an eye doctor. Only the carcass is there, the mind may be anywhere. You have to flag down their attention. They will be interested, only if you are interesting. Mere platitudes, dull obviosities, boring repetitions will drift past their clean ears like pigeons coasting past the steeple of a church. True, they will always be dimly aware of the preacher's voice, a kind of remote roar like a passing plane. But to what avail if the plane does not land and unload its cargo? The man looking at a dull movie can yawn and leave. Up to now, a similar procedure is frowned upon in better churches. The man listening to a sermon on the radio can shake his head and twist the dial, and by that gesture pinch the preacher by the ear and fling him far out into kilocycle space. But the man squirming under a droning, stolid pulpit is the prisoner of convention. He can only sink down into the anesthesia of sleepy-eyed boredom. He is there, and he is not. His brain is in neutral. So you see, there is really no such thing as a captive audience. There is only an open-door opportunity, and you should know what you may be walking into. The audience. Its concerns. Quite recently I preached a Marian week, or a kind of mini-novena, in a charming town in one of the maritime provinces which had been turned into a paradise by gorgeous June weather. Beyond the glassy waters, the rest of the world might be hurrying along at a hyped-up pace and twitching from headline jitters, but here life had slowed to a serene stroll. That week, the front page of the local paper had featured the photo of a sweet old lady whose skillful needle had made her the area's patch quilt queen. On the last night, there was a parish dance in the adjoining hall. Fiddles scraped, accordions wheezed, coloured streamers swayed in the soft summery breeze. Gliding dancers nodded and smiled in what seemed a dream world of radiant pleasure and perfect joy. On the sidelines, the local judge leaned over to me and whispered, "You see how happy these people are? Well, let me tell you something." I grew up among them. Later, as a lawyer, I had them for clients. Practically every one of them has some secret sorrow, some thorny problem, some dark shadow on his life. When you preach to people, keep that in mind. They need comfort, courage, hope. It brought back a passage I had read in Emerson long ago, which goes something like this. Under your pulpit may be sitting the shoemaker whose wife has just gone mad, the spinster who has just been insulted by her neighbour and who still carries the splinter in her heart, the blacksmith who knows that he has jaundice and fears that he will never be well again. These are the people you are preaching to. Speak to them kindly. We can update that to the mother who has just found out that her oldest boy is using drugs, or the father whose coveted promotion to a higher desk has just been blocked by cheap office politics, or the family whose darling youngest has just been diagnosed as a severe diabetic. Clichés, though trite and dull, are usually true, and none is truer than, you never know. From where we look in the pulpit, things are not always what they seem. That elegant cashmere coat in the front pew, which seems the very symbol of conceited success, may be buttoned over a broken heart. The mother whose head drops to sleep during your brilliant peroration may have been up all night with a sick child. The old fellow who alternately sucks his lips in and then pushes them out, while you are so lucidly explaining the Trinity, may be only getting used to a new double-decker of uncomfortable dentures. The more we mingle with people and learn at least a little of their personal lives, the more compassion we are bound to feel. What a crime and a blunder, then, if we ever sink to sarcasm or resort to blistering abuse. Sin, of course, we must condemn the sinner never. So easy it is, in a pulpit monologue, to win an argument and to lose a soul. Every sermon should be played in the key of sympathy. Though it is probably apocryphal, I always like that story about Father Damien making his morning tea. He is supposed to have spilled some of the boiling water on the bare toes of his sandaled foot. Instinctively he winced and cried out. Then he realized he had felt no pain. The next Sunday morning he looked out at his congregation and began, "We lepers." This is rapport with an audience, raised to alpine heights. But at least each of us can try to put himself on a level with his hearers, and never give the impression that he is addressing them from the lofty minaret of perfection, and has nothing in common with those poor sinners down there in the pews. Better if we project the attitude that we are all passengers on the same liner, subject to the same monotony, the same storms, the same seasickness. Our Lord had a way of letting the people know he was thinking on their wavelength. What man among you does not let his ox or his ass out of the stall on the Sabbath to water it? Suppose one of you has 100 sheep. If one of you has a son who falls into a pit, when the Lord saw her, his heart was touched. And so would be ours, did we only know the troubles of our flock, or do we know and fail to make allowances, the audience, its environment? A rectory should be like God's embassy in a foreign country, a tiny spiritual island in a vast secular sea. On its walls hang holy pictures and crucifixes. In its bookcases stand rows of theological works. On its tables lie all sorts of Catholic magazines. The talk at dinner may be about the Red Sox or the Yankees or the Cowboys or the Colts, but it is also about sick calls and sodalities and census and CCD and nuptial masses and the bishop and the transfers of curates and the chancery and so on. Take the house as a whole, the milieu is mainly spiritual, religious, ecclesiastical. Life revolves on the axis of God and the church. But the Catholics in the Sunday morning pews lie for the most part in a very different kind of world. Some of the sociologists call it neopaganism, which means that it is the paganism of old Rome, only that the togas are now topcoats, and the chariots are Chevys, and the privy has become indoor plumbing. All around the Catholic in the street swirls the new and almost universal permissiveness, the deadly marsh mist of pornography, the invisible but deadly fallout of do your own thing, the junking of moral standards, the spread of a drug culture that the old pagans never knew, the so what, acceptance of co-ed dorms, the blasé tolerance of wife-swapping, the incredible open cult of homosexuality. Move over, Sodom. Take a back seat, Gomorrah. This is the atmosphere in which the average Catholic in the street lives. In it he moves and has his being. Where else can he go? Perhaps the last thing that catches his eye before he comes through the church door on Sunday morning is the row of billboards featuring scantily clad and voluptuous figures, waiting there like the tempting meat in a bear trap. After Mass, when he drops into the drugstore, his eyes will fall on rows and rows of raunchy paperbacks. The Sunday paper he tosses into his car carries lurid stories whose shameless details it would be unthinkable to print a few years back. That evening, when he turns on the television, out of the tube may ooze material more suited to a stable than to a living room. We are rapidly approaching the era of the comedian who could use Sunnyflush as a gargle. To counteract all this is the awesome job of the Sunday Mass homily. What else is there to do it? If you want a motive to work hard on your Sunday sermon, just realize that for many out there it is the only antidote for a whole week's poison. Who else speaks up for God and morality? Who else reminds the average Catholic in the street of his obligations and his ideals? It would be nice if God got equal time, but he never does and never will. That is why those 10 minutes that he does get from the Sunday morning pulpit are important out of all proportion to their length. That is why we should try to make that sermon worthwhile. It is a last resort. In a workaday, pleasure-oriented world, it is God's only chance at rebuttal. The preacher trying to neutralize the effect of secular society is pulling against wind and tide. To make that sermon something that people will listen to and heed takes bending at the oars till the back aches and the hands blister. Not literally, of course, but in its own way, preparing a good sermon can be just as hard. Maybe for our comfort, it may sometimes help to remember that one of the early American bishops took for his motto, quaes in coelo, a kind of prodding reminder that for the present it has to be labor in terror. Rest is for eternity, but from here to eternity it is work. And anyone who thinks that turning out a fairly decent sermon is not work has never tried to produce one. The audience. Its composition. Luther was honest enough to admit that when he saw some famous person in his congregation, he was strongly tempted to address and impress that particular personality. Most of us will probably not have prominent people coming to hear us, so this particular temptation will never give us much trouble. Our target should be the average man. Some preachers take this literally and select some unknown individual in one of the rear pews and direct their words specifically at him. They claim that this helps them to give their sermon a warmer, more personal, more intimate, more conversational tone. Personally, it is a method I could not handle. First, it might be embarrassing to the individual singled out, and secondly, it certainly would be a distraction to me. When I preach, I would rather not see anyone in particular. All the books emphasize eye contact, but unless they mean that your eyes sweep across the whole audience like a searchlight ranging the sky, I can see where it could present drawbacks. I might find myself wondering, where have I seen that fellow's face before, or is that woman really wearing an auburn wig? But it is a decision for the individual, sumqueak, to each his own choice. So that the voice projects better, most speakers, I think, prefer to fix their eyes on the anonymous rear rows. Because they are back there like a kind of vague blur, it should make us realize that they are ordinary, run-of-the-mill people. This should remind us that we are not addressing erudite theologians or ascetical mystics. We are talking to minds that need instruction and hearts that need comfort. You can't go wrong with a blend of information and consolation. Perhaps I am unduly pessimistic, but I'm not sure that the average Catholic is too clear about some of the terms we toss off so glibly, like Gethsemane and Golgotha and Pentecost and even Nazareth. Bethlehem, thanks to 10,000 Christmas carols, he surely knows. There probably will be, too, in the usual Sunday congregation a sprinkling of young people who look upon the preacher coldly, if for no other reason, but that he is an authority figure, and so represents the establishment for which Red Enemy. They resent a situation wherein the man in the pulpit promulgates doctrines and decrees and offers no opportunity for discussion or denial. Such a youth is, of course, eons away from his grandfather, who, when something was given off the altar, accepted it like the law of gravity. But those days, and even the more recent ones of Sister Says, have become rare theological antiques. Not that you can do much about it, but you should be forewarned that every congregation probably has a few scowling young Annas who are sitting there not merely passive, but in the spirit of their rebellious day, even hostile. On their banners fly the slow, "Gan, whatever is wrong. It is not entirely their fault. They are victims of the secular and irreligious atmosphere all about them." But if we present the cause of Christ lucidly and vividly and attractively, even they will listen. There are two other types of listeners you can expect to find in any substantial audience, and a third kind that, with a little bit of luck, you may encounter. Type 1 is the strainer. He or she is like that old wire mesh kitchen gadget used to trap coffee grounds, orange seeds and the like. It lets the good things go through and perversely hangs on to the trivia, the scraps. So we have human strainers who will catch and hold on to your every mispronunciation, your grammatical error, your inexact quotation, your wrong date, in a word, any mistake that you may possibly make. But the heart and soul of your sermon, the core of your message, flows right through such picayune minds, leaving no good whatever. Characters like these are about as welcome as ants at a picnic. Try to forgive them and forget them. They may not let you forget, but try anyway. Then there are the watering cans. They receive the message all right, but they never dream it was meant for them. Like a watering can, they hold the homily over the head of someone else and smugly think, "Isn't so-and-so getting hers this morning?" The ideal listener is neither the strainer nor the watering can, but the thermos bottle. They know that the sermon really begins only when the preacher stops. When he says amen, their spirit of faith says, "Okay, let's go," so they retain the essence of the talk as it was poured out, whether cold logic or warm appeal, and take it home with them so that now and then during the week they can take a thoughtful, reinvigorating sip. Of such is the kingdom of homiletics.